Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee and defer to my colleague, Catherine Appy, the Amherst School Committee.
Yes, I'd like to call the Amherst School Committee to order at 7 p.m.
Yes.
And I'd like to call the Pelham School Committee meeting to order at 7 p.m. as well.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of you in the audience. Thank you very, very much for being here this evening. Also like to welcome and extend a good evening to those of you who are watching at home on television. We have a very short but very important agenda this evening, so we hope you will stay with us for the duration. Before we begin, just a very, very quick kudos to our colleague Shabazz for his appointment as congratulations, Shabazz, and best of luck in your journey. The agenda is very brief this evening. We have the superintendent's mid-cycle goals review as well as the student services report. So I'm going to dispense with asking the members of the committee if they want to change the agenda and just go directly to Maria, who can begin with her mid-cycle goal review. Maria? Oh, want to do that first?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, I'm sorry. For the second meeting in a row, I've been reminded that I have neglected announcements and public comment. I'll give Shabazz another shout out for the announcement. Any other public comments from members of the audience? Not hearing anything, we'll go to Maria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And both topics tonight are very interconnected, and they're all from the educational part of the world, so we're taking a break from budget, which feels actually very nice to take a breath in this forum anyway. We're not taking a break internally from our work. However, I think it would be important to really state up front that I think to have a little bit of context, if I can, let's see how my technology, and I'm actually using new technology tonight, so you're going to bear with me again. I'm learning and growing in this. So we're going to see how we started our process, which is around the superintendent evaluation process. So a little context, just a reminder. We started our work on September 24th, where the school committee, Mike presented to us, and the school committee offered feedback on the rubric for the superintendent evaluation and identified some priorities. We then heard the district improvement plan, level of self-assessment and school improvement plans on October 9th. And then on October 23rd, I presented my goals, and you all discussed and voted my goals for the year, which would be the basis of my evaluation. So where we are today is kind of a progress report. So it's the mid-cycle goal review by the superintendent in discussion with school committee. You'll have information which you have in front of you, which uses the DESE form, which outlines my evaluation goals and summarizes my progress, which also asks me to give a level of overview, analysis, some detail around each of the goal areas, and then to be able to rate whether I'm on target or not with those goals. And then we also have an update on our district improvement plan goals. So you have that information in front of you. Again, I'm going to apologize up front, which I did for many of the committee members already, for not having this information out in advance. Typically, we try to do that so that you're able to engage in the conversation more fully. But quite honestly, between budget turnaround time and a few other events that have happened over the past few weeks, the work time has been a little crunched. So again, I welcome questions and, again, feedback. If there are additional questions that people want to share with me in between meetings or at the next meeting as well. I'm sorry?
Copies of this, of the slides?
Oh, I do not have those, but I can get those for you. So also, just for future, again, to remind people that on May 28th is when I will present to the committees the end of cycle progress report. Then on May 28th through the 25th is when the school committee members will each write their individual end-of-cycle summative evaluation reports, which then are compiled by the school committee chair into a summary end-of-cycle evaluation. That report includes information of the goals, my evaluation goals, as well as the rubric for superintendents. And then on the 25th is when that report will be discussed publicly and voted. So that's our timeline and what we're working within. So just to give a little bit of context, because sometimes, at least for me, things can seem a little out of sorts, and it's nice to have the anchor of where we are within a larger context. So just to orient you briefly to the documents that are in front of you, the first document in your packet, again, they have the holes popped into those so you can put them right into your binders that were handed out at the time of, I think, the district improvement plan. The first few pages are the DESE form, and then you will see each of the goal areas indicated with the goals, the person in department responsible, timeline, evidence, corresponding state standards, and then you will have a column now that shows a brief progress report. At the end of this cycle in the summative evaluation, it'll be a much lengthier document, which will include artifacts that will support the completion of each of the goals. So just to orient you to what's in front of you. And the pile of paper, hopefully you will not have a pile of paper like that at the end. So just to remind us of the evaluation goals that were created through our process, I have one professional practice goal. I have two student learning goals. One is a short-term goal and one is a longer-term goal. And two goals have been identified from the district improvement plan. What I plan to do tonight, you have the documentation with you that addresses each of these goals and where we're sitting currently. But I wanted to highlight a goal from the superintendent evaluation document and then highlight some of the goals from the district improvement plan. And then again, answer questions on any and all. So the first goal is the professional practice goal that I'm actually kind of excited to show you this, and this is my use of technology. So this goal was and is during the 2012-13 school year that we'll be implementing a structure for identifying effective instructional practices through the DILT, or the District Instructional Leadership Team, which will then and can be adapted for use at the school level so that instructional improvement happens. So it's how do we use our DILT as a mechanism to provide resources to building level staff, principals in the efforts of improving instruction. So I'm very fortunate that I have an amazing group of people who are actually implementing and creating documents for these goals. And I want to thank up front Mike Morris, who really created this structure, which you'll see reference the teacher, student, and content. And Mike, at any point, if you want to jump in on this one, feel free. This also, feedback was given from the district instructional leadership team members, so I thank all of the members for being engaged in this process to create this document. And what I'd love to do is just kind of show you how this works. This chart is provided to each of the administrators, and it identifies research-based areas to focus on. So it has resources like articles as well as videos for the building-based administrators and or teachers to use when we're talking about strategies. So what does the strategy look like? So for instance, let me see if I can use my technology here. So if we're looking under the teacher area and we want to know how is a teacher assessing for understanding? So we want to have some examples of formative assessment. What we can do, and let's see if this is going to work for me. I don't think I even have to touch that. There we go. Okay. So it brings us to a page that has text-based information on the instructional strategies. So these are chapters that the principal and or teacher leaders could use with staff to help illustrate formative assessment and different strategies to use. So these resources come from Teach Like a Champion, Research for Better Teaching, I think are the primary resources used here. And then you can also, so you could ask staff to read an article around formative assessment for them to discuss, and then you can actually illustrate by video what does it look like. So I'm going to show us a little video. Jerry, will this have sound?
While Jerry's doing that, do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
Can you go back to the document to its left
I
on the
can
bottom?
try.
Yep. No. You don't have to do that. Just there you go.
So you want me to go to
Just click that at the bottom.
this?
Yep. Nope.
The tab on the
The
bottom.
other window.
Yeah,
This
there you
one.
are.
Aha, thank you.
So just one more thing about this is when you go into a classroom, there are a myriad of things to look for. And so what this chart was an attempt at is to say what research-based strategies are out there. These are from Dr. Ferguson, many other people involved in the MET research, so that it narrows what we can look for and comment on, because we want to comment on the things that have the largest impact on student achievement. So like the example I use often is wait time. So how often a teacher waits before calling on students, and that's really important, but what's important about it is the participation of kids. Wait time is a strategy. What we want to look is what are the student outcomes that we would see if people were using the effective strategies. So these are the types of questions, and they're intentionally open-ended, they're not yes, no, that we want our administrators and our teachers thinking about, because if we're seeing these done at a high level in our classrooms, and we'll have the student evidence to support that, that's going to have the greatest impact on our kids. So it's taking a huge category of what do we look for when we go in classrooms, and how do we narrow it to the things that make the biggest difference for all of our kids. So that's why when you see the teacher, student, and content, and there's 15 or 16 areas, right, we could have 150 areas up there, but these are the ones that we're saying that research is showing us have the largest impact on student achievement.
Who's initiating these questions? Like, is it a principal then sharing it with staff and saying, think about X, or is it a teaching group, or I forget the real
Right.
terminology, is saying, oh, we should really check out this question?
So it's a little bit of both. I would say right now we're at the level where this has been, as Superintendent said, the district instructional leadership team has been working on it. So when we're when administrators or teacher leaders are walking in classrooms, these are types of things that we're looking to see and looking to comment on. What you'll notice too is next to or after those, you'll see these weird things that say like 2A1. Those are actually the state standards. So we're trying to make things clean. So not like we need 4 sheets to find anything, and then so these should be, because that dovetails with the evaluation system as well. And they're not as much fun to hyperlink on because they just link you to the actual
we're not gonna
standard
go to the
as opposed to a
non-human
video of seeing teaching. But the idea is that this would then lead to feedback to teachers, which then might lead to professional development. If we're noticing that, wow, our teachers are really strong at learning objectives, we're not going to do that much additional work with that, but we might identify a teacher or two who we see and we say, that person might be a model teacher for that one. If we notice that teachers aren't communicating with their students in ways we want, then we might say, let's take a step back and think about how we can improve this as a staff. So it's important for the individual, but it's also important for the general trend level. And we're doing some work with that at our district leadership team as well. What are we noticing is really strong in our classrooms? What are we noticing in the aggregate need some support, and how can we build development activities related to that?
So we're,
Sure.
so, no, please stay, because this I want to say, this is the work that Mike is leading for us to bring the educator evaluation system to the level where it actually is making a difference in the classroom, which I think is somewhat unique. I think to have someone who's able to really take it to this level. And the district instructional leadership team is an amazing group of people who are really grappling with these hard issues so that we can actually make this difference, and to be able to actually show, which for me is a really meaningful piece, because I think, as Dr. Ferguson would say, you really have to show people what you mean. Don't just talk about it in words, but actually show what you mean by, whether it's formative assessment or different strategies. So Mike compiling this information has been honestly quite a gift for all of us. So Trevor, I think, wanted to.
Thank you. The administrators, the district instructional leader team, is there opportunity for teachers to also go around and get lessons and share strategies with other teachers to see what's going on? Are they also involved in these going from classroom to classroom to see what's happening?
So we have done instructional rounds the last 2 years, and that's related to this work going deep into instruction. And right now this is more at the administrative level and teacher leader level, like the high school department heads do observations. They've been involved in these loops. But over time we do want to, this is kind of, we're like road testing this right now,
Right.
candidly, because
We're phasing
I
in.
created this on a research basis. And but over time we do want to get to the place you're talking about.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just
Kind
a clarification. So does that mean that, like, right now, do teachers have access to the underlying research chapters, videos that when you
Right.
click on that miraculously appear.
So at this moment, it's when administrators or teacher leaders, when observations are taking place, these resources can be emailed, delivered, printed out, delivered. So we haven't made the whole of it, and quite candidly, I want to make sure that we're on the right side of the copyright trademark kind of situation before we go that way. So,
But the
if
videos
that's-
were good.
yeah. Well, the videos are all, they're open source because they're, yeah.
Before we leave this slide, and maybe it's down below here, I don't know if you can
Yep.
scroll in a little bit, but I'm wondering, with respect to the progress report, do we move away at this point from talking about standards and indicators? I'm remembering ROM 1, B, ARA 3, and I see 1B1, 1B2. But do we move away from that at this stage, or do we come back to that?
Sure. So I think when these two different things happening, so let me see if I can help. So those are looking at the teaching standards. When we're talking about the superintendent evaluation, those are superintendent standards, which aren't the same. So with your question, is it okay to ask a question back?
Sure.
When you're referencing coming back to the standards, you're talking about the teaching standards or the superintendent
I was
standards?
talking about the superintendent's rubric,
Yeah.
particularly Roman numeral 1, B, Arabic 3.
So that wouldn't be referenced because this is much more focused on what happens in classrooms versus the standards for superintendent. That's what I would say as reference
Yes.
in terms of this chart.
Yes, and on the district improvement plan, we can identify, because in the, there is a column that references the state standards. So my work is developing the strategies that then the administrators will use and the resources they will use. So I charge someone for creating, and then the implementation. So you can tie it back to my standard, but these are specific to teachers. So I want to try, I just want to show you the video because it's really fun. And I think it's really helpful to see, teaching for a second. So let's see if I can do this. So am I going to observation support, that little tab? Okay. So now I'm going to go to, I think I'm going to do this if I can. Let's say the stoplight method. And they're very quick. It's like a 1 minute. You got it rolling there, Jerry, okay? Okay, we shall see. Okay, so I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go here.
Scroll down.
One way that I like to collect formative assessments is using my end-of-class stoplight method. Before you leave, I'm going to quickly give you a sticky note. I want you to either write one of these three things. Students use a Post-it note to, first of all, write either what they learned and post it on the green light, what questions they considered, post it on the yellow light. Did you consider an idea, a question, or you're going to tell me what you considered? And oftentimes the most important, if anything stopped their learning during class, and put that on the red light. Really helps me understand not only what went well during class, but also what I need to do to prepare for the next day.
So at the end, we get volume, sorry.
What is this, the teaching channel?
So this, Mike, which is this one from? It's from, let's see.
So they're,
Yeah.
this one's from the teaching channel. The other sources that people had, Teach Like a Champion, which are often from urban charter schools. We have videos from Teachers College, which are all from New York City public
Right.
schools. And I'm missing one or two resources, but those are the primary video resources.
I mean, and they're all really short snippets for the most part. I mean, some go up to 5 or 6 minutes, but it does help you to see in action the strategy, because quite honestly, teaching is very complex, and to be able to say, I want you to integrate, different ways of gathering, formative assessment data to inform your instruction the next day. Well, show me. So this is an amazing resource, I think, and will be an amazing resource at the teacher level.
Thank you.
I
So
just can't
thank
read
you.
that. What does that say? Somebody said my learning stopped because what?
Because
Distracting.
Disrespecting.
distracting. Someone's bothering him. So that may change seating the
Same
next
thing.
day. Okay, so let me see if I can, all right, how am I getting back here now? Can I just close out? I think close out is. There we go. I think this will do. Can I resume from here? Yes? This? There we go. Whew. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. So this is one amazing strategy we wanted to show you, which is one way of developing a structure that can help move us forward at the district level right now and at the school level in terms of instructional improvement. I also wanted to call your attention again, you've had these district improvement plan goals, and these are the general goal areas. There are 5 general areas, and they are related to instructional improvement, which is referenced by one of the goals you just viewed. Also, coordinated curriculum and a tiered instructional model. The third is the educator evaluation model and the effective implementation of that model. Utilizing data tools to analyze and improve classroom instruction and just to monitor our performance in general as a school district, and then creating a systemic, strength-based approach to family and community engagement. So the general areas, and under each of these general goal areas, there are a number of goals which are very specific that address and hopefully move us forward in these areas. So I'd like to highlight a few of the goal areas and just kind of run through Goal Area 1B, by June 2013, we will have a system for offering, accepting, and documenting staff professional development that will be implemented. We have just purchased My Learning Plan, and it has the OASIS element, which is around educator evaluation. But we also have the capacity to put in place a process for managing professional development. This would allow us to have a paperless professional development offering for staff, also approval process. It also documents the development, what staff actually take in terms of their own development. And we have different capacities to view who is in any professional development anytime, what does the subload look like, those sorts of things at a broader scope. And then we can also have teachers manage their own professional development points for their relicensure. So it compiles that information for educators to be able to print out for their process. This also does connect professional development to recommendations made on a staff person's evaluation. So this is, we do have the My Learning Plan. We have the system right now, but it will be up and running for September. So this is one goal that we're making strong progress on. Also, I'd like to just note again for, oh, go ahead, Michael.
I just have a question, that maybe Jerry knows the answer to. With that software, is it, when you said it was tied into the evaluation stuff, is it customized for the Massachusetts? And is it a
Yes.
Massachusetts product, or is it a national product?
It's a national product that they take the state standards from the state where you are and upload those, and you also have the capacity to customize your own forms as well. So in a few minutes, Mike probably doesn't know this, but he's going to speak a little bit about classroom observations, and the form that we created is uploaded into this as well. So
Cool.
they've been very responsive, and it's been a product that, while it's challenging still to kind of get the cycle going for educator evaluation, it's been much more effective in terms of like minimizing paper and just having oversight of the process has really been helpful, which Mike can speak to as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Also, I just wanted to mention again, one of the goals which is one goal, Goal 1G. By 2013, a study of time and learning will be completed, including the time allocated for adult collaboration, which was one of the priority areas that I was identifying. As a system, we needed to make sure we had adequate time for the adults to learn. We did, and I'm mentioning this because I'm not sure if everyone in the committee has received this report yet. I can't remember if Kathy sent it out or not to the wider committee. But we do have results from the Amherst Time and Learning Study, which did identify that we are short the required 900 hours. So we are in the process of looking at those results and coming up with potential solutions. We have surveyed staff and families to gather their input on potential ways of addressing this issue. We will be putting that on the Pelham agenda for the next meeting. And then we are looking internally just to calculate our minutes at the secondary level. We do not have concerns at the secondary level from our own work that we have to do regularly to look at time and learning, but we will conduct that ourselves. So I just want to let you know we are partially through this.
Michael?
Just on the time and learning study, would you say that the study has sufficient carryover to be relevant to sharing with Shutesbury elementary districts?
My guess would be yes, but I think that the, Joan Wickman and the principals would really need to look at it from that lens and then see what sense.
Right,
But
but as
my
a
guess
starting
is
point
yes.
for analysis, okay.
Yes. So we'd be happy to share that
Great,
and
thank
send
you.
that, of course. Yes.
It is on the website now.
Okay, and it also is up on the front page of the web with a link directly to the report. And we'll be doing work on this topic related to the Amherst Elementary Schools and have data presented to the school committee on February 5th. So we have a very quick turnaround time and information gathering. I think the family surveys need to be in by Friday, and then the information will be compiled. Another highlight that I'd like to mention, which is a Mike highlight. So you might want to come up, Mike, and join us. So by June 2013, all administrators, department heads, and teacher leaders will be able to describe and rate instructional practice that they observe consistently. This is goal 3G. And I do have a copy of the observation form, if it might be helpful to hand out. So I'd love Mike to talk a little bit about how the district instructional leadership team has kind of approached the process of observation, maybe talk about how the form was created in collaboration with the APEA, and then how you've been using technology to help in real-time normal practice.
Sure. So I'll start from the beginning, which was last year. There was a working group. There was a collaboration between the APEA and the administration. A subcommittee of that group went off and tried to develop an observation tool. We reached out to our MSAN partners, Minority Student Achievement Network, and we looked at a form that had been used in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Bedford, New York, and one other district that I'm not going to remember in MSAN. I apologize. And we took a look at that. People felt good about the formatting of it. In particular, they wanted to have some kind of checkboxy type things so that we are kind of noticing observationally there's some consistency. We also didn't want to de-emphasize the comment box, because I think once we get into a points category, box 1 plus box 2, we really devalue teaching, and we didn't want to end up in there. And this felt for us a happy medium. So that was done last spring. We met this fall just to make sure it was consistent with where folks were, and made some slight language tweaks, but essentially it was what we needed it to be. So this year we've spent a lot of time at our DILT meetings taking a look at this form and watching video, and Maria put a resource on. We have some other video resources, as you saw, and watching teachers teach, and then filling out the form. And the way we've done it with technology is we took that form, put it on SurveyMonkey, which is a resource many of you may be familiar with, and then analyze the results immediately. So that was a nice thing, as opposed to filling it out by hand and then coming back 2 weeks later and analyzing it. People were able to fill out that form on SurveyMonkey, and 15 minutes later, immediately, but it takes about 10, 15 minutes to fill out the form, we're able to see where were we consistent and where were there inconsistencies between the different raters. And we had about 20 some odd people in DILT, so it's a pretty big group. And we were able to address those, and over the course of the semester, I guess, we've gotten much tighter in terms of the inter-rater reliability. And at kind of every DILT meeting, we're watching a video, and whether we're filling out that form or more working on the feedback and how to deliver it, we've been consistently watching a video and offering and looking for what was strong, what might we offer feedback on, and it's really developing the skills of the observers, which if you look at any research on evaluation systems, if that's not done, everything else is not important. If people don't have confidence, then the inter-rater reliability and the quality of the observations that are taking place, it ruins the confidence in the system, and that's doesn't work. So we've been doing a lot of work with that form, but really it's around norming our practices and honing in on what are the critical pieces that teachers are doing that are helping all kids succeed.
It is, and is there some way during this process that if you were to take on new raters, for example, would they have to go through this same process?
Exactly. Yeah.
With some members of the current DILT team in order to
Yep, and that's do you want
maintain
to?
rate of reliability?
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I would love to just comment on that a little bit, and then maybe Mike wants to go a little bit into how he's supporting evaluators at the building level with having observers go together and then have time to reflect on what was viewed in the classroom. But I also did want to mention that, you know, the high school has taken some of this work that's happened at Tilt back to the department heads and had this rich conversation and viewed videos and did some of the same processes that we did. And I know Mike has worked with some of the other school staff, because it's as valuable for staff to see what does this really mean when people are looking for, because how does it make sense when you're looking at this form? That's where I think the learning happens on all levels. So Mike's been a resource to the school level, to the administrative teams to bring that there. But I don't know if you want to mention a little bit about.
Yeah, so 2 of the schools invited me in for a staff meeting, and we watched a 10-minute clip, which is roughly analogous to what the system calls for, of teachers teaching. And actually the teachers in both these schools filled out that same form that you have in front of you, and then we looked at the results of that form. And it was fascinating, because I think we talk a lot, you know, I think we all get in the place where we talk a lot about what we think, and then we actually see teaching, and sometimes even though we think we saw the same thing, we didn't. And what was interesting for me, just taking a step back, is some of these videos I'd seen multiple times, and I'd see it the 5th time, and I'd see something I hadn't seen, and commented on, and did the Survey Monkey, or did the rating the first 4 times. So that's been a really interesting thing, and it's just been really good for teachers to watch teaching and see teaching, and be commenting on it, because it's more real than just having kind of more abstract conversations. But what Maria was referencing, 2 things. One is that I'm just about done, but I've done an observation with just about every member of DILT at this point, so that not only are we watching the video, but we're actually going into classrooms in our school system to observe 10, 15 minutes of a lesson, and come back and debrief and talk about what we saw. So it's another way to norm the practice, and it's been great for me to be in classrooms ranging from an AP science class to preschool. So we're really seeing how the form is working with 3 and 4-year-olds versus 17, 18-year-olds, and it works well. It's just you adjust it based on the developmental level of kids. And there was one other thing you wanted.
How about just
the
oversight
feedback.
of OASIS and feedback?
Right. So the nice thing also about the OASIS, or My Learning Plan system, for it is that everything's digital. It's a completely paperless system. So today I was at Fort River, and they were just supporting them with artifacts, which is samples of their work that they're doing, and that's all digital. So we're really getting to the place where we don't have, like Maria's slide before, we don't have that big booklet. It's really in a way where access can be limited. People, I didn't misplace that. Everything is really kept there. And for me, what it's helped in what Maria's asked me to do is that I've read every observation that's taken place in our district this year. And every week I pick 2 observations at random and give feedback to the observer. So not to the person being observed, but to the observer, so that it also continues to help us norm our practices. And I think if you just do it's like any other training. If you do training and you don't follow up on see how things are actually going, you have no way of knowing whether it's been effective or not. So it's really kind of a cycle for that, and I appreciate that my administrative colleagues have been really open to the feedback and quite happy to receive it, to be
They're all
candid.
learners, thank goodness.
Debbie?
I just had a question about backup. Since there's no paper, is there an electronic backup? So
Yeah,
it doesn't get
exactly.
lost?
Yep.
Thank goodness.
I assume-
Deb,
Okay,
and then-
so this is in Oasis right now, and so can teachers or evaluators get reports out of it? So like look at, I'm assuming there are multiple observations, so sort of look at it over time or in various.
Yep, that's actually the goal, is that the observations take place, they're shorter, so you're seeing less, you're focusing on it just 10, 15 minutes, but that you're seeing trends over time. And if you're offering feedback, that you're going to be back soon enough where you potentially would want to see some of that feedback in action. Our old system, where there was, for people with professional teacher status, there was 1 observation every 2 years. It's a long time to wait for feedback to become realized, and to remember that you gave it 2 years ago is a different matter altogether. So this is really looking for those patterns and trends, and they all stay in the same file. So like for the teacher to say, oh, I can't remember what that last piece of feedback, they have access to it, as well as the administrator who's coming in. Yeah.
Rick?
I'm a little confused about like there's various things going on. Like
Sure.
one is this form, I understand that.
Right.
And there's various observations done there. Then there's instructional rounds, which is a whole different thing.
That's right.
Okay.
So instructional rounds I mentioned, can I just jump in on
Yeah,
that? Because
sure.
it's a helpful line in the sand. So that was not at all evaluative. Instructional
Yeah.
rounds was really just to develop, see what's happening in our classrooms, but like plural classrooms. It wasn't like I'm going to observe Rick or I'm going to observe Maria. It was what's happening with a particular focus. It was not part of our evaluation system. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that.
And then in the video, we saw what seemed to be more of a teacher doing her own evaluation in the class, talking to her students.
Right.
So that's kind of just something you encourage, or?
Yep. So the resources, both the text and the video-based resources, are opportunities both to build our own capacity of what good teaching, what good strategies would look like, and also they can be passed along to teachers. So if someone is struggling, let's say with behavior management, I'm just going to pick on that one, there's a number of resources that can be delivered to that teacher, both video and text-based, so that teacher has some support to improve their practice. Because get better doesn't usually work as a message. Right? I mean, in any, not just teaching, in any field, right? It's how do you get better? How do you develop the skills? And we want to develop the skills of all of our teachers to be at the highest level possible. And so we don't want to just do the press, right? The get better. We want to do the support. We want this to improve. And here are some resources that might help you that have been successful both in our district and other places. So that video, that short one, is an example of formative assessment. So how do you know what your kids are actually thinking about what happened during the day? So that was one example of a strategy that might be a suggestion to a teacher who might need support in that area. And they might have self-selected that they need support in that area. It doesn't have to be just based on observation, but it's kind of like a toolkit so that when our teachers want support, need support, we have something to deliver more than just our words or what's in our head, that there's a research base to what we're saying. Yeah.
Of course. Michael, I have an observation. I just would like you to tell me whether or not I'm on the right track or whether I'm out in left field somewhere.
Yeah.
But listening to you and Maria, the language that you use to describe what's happening in the classroom and what you as administrators are looking for when you go in to observe strikes me as an incredibly profound shift in the use of language to describe what goes on in the classroom. Briefly, to me, tell me if I'm right or wrong, it goes from a shift of a teacher teaching math to students to teaching students math, with the emphasis on not so much the math, while that's significant and important, but with the emphasis on the teaching, the specific instructional practices that a teacher engages in. And what I'm concerned with is that as a teacher, particularly in the secondary level, moves from the focus on teaching a particular set of skills or discipline to focusing on their teaching skills, that you mentioned support, and I'm curious as to what the support, what the PD is for, say, a veteran teacher who is accustomed to teaching history, who suddenly now is being asked to, yes, teach history, but back off of that and focus instead on the instructional practices that you engage in. What support is available to that teacher?
So I would, is it okay?
No, please.
So for me, it's the focus, the core focus is on learning. Teaching is a way that learning happens. Content, history, is a way that learning happens, or you need to know the content. So I think the frame for me is we want to look at student learning. And we're going to observe students, and we're observing teacher, but really observing the students, right? We're looking at what they're learning. And we're going to make adjustments, and if you think about students, teacher, content, I hear you, and content is one of those three things, right? So I don't think you can have a strong teacher in the absence of high content knowledge. I absolutely agree. But I also think someone could have high content knowledge and kids might not be learning what they need to learn. Now, you could have the flip of that, right? You could have someone who's really strong instructionally without the content knowledge, and that is also, again, but so learning is the common thread for us, student learning. And then the teaching strategies and the content come in there. But I didn't answer your second question, which was around what is the development that we have. So I think I have two answers for that. One's probably going to be a little more satisfactory than the other, but I'll say them both. So one is that we hope that the evaluation process is a development process, that there is no distinction between them. For the vast majority of we have really strong teachers in Amherst.
Yes, we do.
For the vast majority of our teachers.
And Pelham.
And Pelham, excuse me, the Amherst Pelham Regional Schools. Sorry about that. for the vast majority of our teachers, the evaluation process is not one of fear or scare. It's around development. How do people authentically get feedback and support and further developing their already strong skills? So that's my first answer. I think the second answer, which might be less satisfactory, is as we're working on my learning plan, there are ways directly to link the two. I took a trip a month or two ago to another district that has both of these up and running really strongly, and actually they have their professional development is linked by standards to the evaluation. So the systems talk to each other. So if you want to look at improving your certain instructional strategy that's in the standards, you can look and find a professional development activity or study group that's directly connected across. So that's not here, but that's the design and the intent, as Maria said, to be operational next year.
I also want to add to the requirement for principals now is very different from what it used to be. It used to be much more of a building manager, and now it is an instructional leader. So part of these resources that Mike and the district instructional leadership team are creating are for the leader to be able to actually teach staff. So, faculty meetings are no longer, oh, by the way, did you get your attendance in? It's about teaching, whether it's about formative assessment or one of the strategies. They are being asked to develop their staff. And that's partially through evaluation and partially just through great embedded professional development.
Thank you, Michael.
Michael. So, I'm not an educator, but I'm more an organizational person. So, what strikes me, and it's come up before in terms of shifting the expectations, in terms of, it seems like what you might be wanting to move towards building a repository of internal, best practices. So teachers who are showing whatever, and then instead of having someone who's outside to sort of build that. So what strikes me wearing the school committee hat is that coming down the road, since the school committee has a contract with teachers, to be thinking about, it's a shift in expectation in terms of broadening the expectations of teachers, that if rather than teaching in isolation in the classroom, that it really is functionally teaching across schools and classrooms, and that
It's all about collaboration.
So that if someone's tapped and says, can you please spend 5 minutes demonstrating on a video so we can link to you,
Exactly.
that's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, there are
please.
schools that kind of pushing that boundary. Uncommon Schools, which Teach Like a Champion's from, they're definitely pushing that boundary. And the thing they focus on is, if you're the master teacher and you come in, you're going to teach 5 minutes of a lesson, and if I'm the novice teacher, I'm going to teach the next 5 minutes. Because it's not enough to just watch someone teach. It's actually equally important that they practice the teaching. It's not just enough to watch, but it's the practice and get feedback in that continuous loop. So
It's about the learning community, and all the adults are engaged in their own development and improvement.
Yeah.
And it's creating those conditions for that. That's why part of the teaching and learning study has to be, are we building in time for the adults to actually learn and grow and share their expertise? So collaboration really does connect here.
Trevor?
I was thinking, as Michael said that, he always steals my thunder. But as we're discussing how this, would be implemented and rolled out and actually work, I hate to bring up, scary propositions, but it's a major shift in what teachers might be expected. What I'm seeing in, especially in the middle school, the higher and the high school, is teaching is a fiefdom unto itself. I'm a math teacher. I've been doing this for years, and this is how I do it. And the move towards collaboration is almost pushed away from by teachers. That they, I'm come from the field of science, where it's part of the culture to put out exactly what I've done, how I've done it, and let it be open to critique. Right. What do you think I should do differently? How should this work? And the sum total of that improves science as a whole. And we're asking teachers who've been doing it for years to look at it like a scientist would. This is how you show me how you teach, look at how everybody else is teaching, and let's put together and distill it to the best practices. So my question just is, and I hear you describing our teachers as being, professionals and saints, but is there any pushback to what teachers would, would have to do to make this work?
I'll go first, and then Mike hop on. How I would kind of illustrate the progression or the change in culture, the culture shift has been over time. We started this work 2.5, 3 years ago now around professional learning community, and changing some expectations, and it's been there's been a plan, but it's also been somewhat organic because you want to be very conscious of how do you engage people in the excitement of learning and changing. So I'd say we were positioned really well before we had the educator evaluation model come in and start to impose some of expectations around professional learning, some team goals and such. So our staff, while I won't say there have not been bumps in the road or moments of angst for either staff or administrators of how are we going to make this happen, we're in a very different place, and I think we're foundationally in a really good place to then take the next step where things get a little tougher because evaluation starts to, eke in. So I'm going to let you jump on what I.
Sure. If I could add, so my experience, one of the things I really enjoy about my position this year is that I'm spanning the pre-K to 12 continuum, and so my experience at the high school has been not as you maybe were concerned about. So one of the nice models they have at the high school is that department heads, who are teachers, have release time, and they're the ones doing some of the observations. So certainly the high school administration is, but there are teachers who are actively, whoa. She said to move the mouse. Okay.
It sounded like a mouse.
That was a little scary. Okay.
And definitely defer to Mark if he wants to jump in at any point. But my experience with the high school department heads is they know the content, to get to Kip's point, at that level. But they really do know teaching strategies. They're invested. I've been at some of the meetings that the high school, and Maria has as well this year, where the high school department heads are meeting with their administrators, and they're watching video, and they're doing the process. And they're close to the ground of teaching. And they're also close to the ground of content. So it really works as a model at a secondary, particularly a high school level, where you have content specialists continue to work on the instructional piece, within a group, within a context, and it's really structured well to do that work to allay any fears around
evaluation or just push back against changing the culture.
Right. So I mean, good, Mark? Yeah. Or do you want to jump in?
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Amy?
It also, this kind of model gives a lot of respect to the teachers as professionals and as in control of what's happening, and they're supported by each other. So it's not someone coming in and saying, do it this way. It's them really being professional and looking at their practice, and it's much more intrinsic for them that way, and you'll make the change and want to work at it as a professional that way.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to move on because I know we have other people waiting to speak. Thank you. So in one moment, our final highlight is family engagement, which Marta is going to present because it's a very important goal area that I really want to give some time to. But before we go there, I'm just going to say coming soon, Dr. Rhonda Cohen will be providing an update on teaching and learning in March. So you have some data around where are we in terms of the goals specific to curriculum instruction. But she'll be speaking very clearly to that in March. And then very soon, in a matter of minutes, Dr. Faye Brady will be providing an update on student services, which encompasses many of the goal areas, PBIS, special education, many of the goal areas that are discussed. So you'll have that information tonight. And now we are fortunate to have Dr. Guevara share information with us about family engagement.
Thank you so much, and I'm really excited. I know it's late and it's Tuesday, but I'm excited about being here to share some of the work that we're doing pertaining to our commitment to.
Do you want me to click for you, or would you like to
that
click
would be
yourself?
lovely. That would be lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. But we got to move.
Pertaining. Jerry, we're not on her thingy.
I'll start. Pertaining to family engagement, family and community engagement, which is one of the major goals is, in the district improvement plan brought forth. As you know, this and other district work is based on sound educational research, and we count on the support and expertise and partnership of some of the researchers, that we have based our work on. For this report, I will remind the committees and the audience of the work of these two esteemed researchers. And starting with, oh, and I want to say that I'm going to read a lot of this because there's so much information. I want to make sure I cover it, but there's so much to share.
Thank you for printing this
So,
out. This is
yeah, Dr. Ferguson, as you know, we've had a long-standing relationship with him. As you know, his initial survey where the research and information that informed his tripods project, which was about what do you teach, how do you teach it, and to whom? So it's content, pedagogy, and relationships, exactly what you were addressing earlier, as well as the current MED project, so the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation project on teacher effectiveness and student voices pertaining to being able to share that. And he's visited us, and we continue to get his support. It's really important. Ron states, his research states that students achieve at higher levels when effective partnerships between schools, families, and communities exist. And we can share the research, but that's basically a really strong foundation of our work. Dr. Karen Mapp, we became acquainted with her work when the principals, some teachers, and I went last summer to the Harvard Leadership Institute. She was one of the presenters. We were all incredibly impressed. Her session was incredibly inspirational and transformative, I would say. We studied her research and projects, and we decided to design our family university after the parent university project she created for the Boston Public Schools. You can go to the next one. Before I give you an update, I think it's important that we review the core beliefs that guide our work. And so I'm going to read these just for the benefit of our public viewing audience. All parents, guardians have dreams for their children and want the best for them. This is a universal concept. All parents, guardians have the capacity to support their children's learning. Parents and guardians and school staff must be equal partners in the educational journey of students. And the key here is the responsibility for building partnerships to make this happen between school and families rests primarily with school staff, especially school leaders. So the onus, this is our responsibility. We now have become aware that this is, a huge deal, that we can indeed make a change in terms of student achievement and academic gains. So it is up to us to create those conditions for those partnerships. Let's see what else. So why are we committed to do this work? Additional information is research informs us that effective family engagement is one of the strongest predictors of educational success. Learning the fact has influenced our district work pertaining to families significantly. This is something tangible under our leadership that can contribute to gains in academic achievement. We can do something with families that can potentially improve learning outcomes for all students, but it rests on our shoulders. Okay, so we have to do the initiative, we have to do the groundwork, and we have to be the leaders about it. So family engagement, if you think about your own schooling and your own upbringing and how your families, our different experiences, family engagement used to be more of an outreach, used to have a limited focus on parents and guardians' role as a supporter of their own children, their child's learning at home. Schools would invite parents only. There was not much reference to guardians, so it wasn't as inclusive. They would be invited to a meeting or event that was about their own children and their own achievement. Well, current thinking expands on the multiple role parents and guardians have in a wider global scale to mean a commitment to the education of all. And clearly in our communities support education, believe in education as a key to freedom, and it's really important. And we're very, very happy that we have this as one of our major goals. I will, though, insert a word of caution, because this work can't just be an add-on or yet another initiative. We need to be courageous and make this a systemic approach. we must be able to include this weave this parent and guardian engagement into the teaching and learning, making it an essential strategy to address student achievement. And this leads up to the actual district improvement plan update. And I will just, for the benefit again of our viewing public, I'll just remind people that the actual goal, one of the major goals our superintendent has brought forth with support of the leadership team, is create a systemic strength-based approach to family and community engagement, strengthening connections to families, students, and community partners, an approach that leads to gains in student achievement. So we first, I'm trying to go fast. We first needed to find out how we were doing, right? So we have this ambitious goal. We have a lot of strategies. We have actionable steps, but we first needed to find out how we were doing. So we decided, this started in May of last year, we decided to use, and I'll share this.
Would you mind reaching?
Marta, if I may, please don't feel rushed.
Yeah, don't
Okay.
You have some very important information to share with us, and
Okay.
We're all here to hear.
I don't want you to feel as if
All right.
we need to get out of here by a certain time.
I appreciate it. I know that my colleagues are following me, so
No, and we're
It's
fine.
more
I'm
important.
trying to be.
Not at all. It's
Okay.
more important to
Great.
that you tell us and share with
Thank
us
you.
what you need to share with us.
Great, I really appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank you for letting me know. So some of you will remember this document because Maria has referenced it in the past. I have referenced it in the past. So we chose this document. This was created by one of the commissioners' groups, councils, his council pertaining to family engagement and communities. And this is a document that we found incredibly user-friendly, and it was, we shared it with the leadership team. Rachel Boyne, who's the Assistant Human Resource Director, is part of the group.
Which is the Racial Imbalance Advisory Council from
Yeah.
the governor appointed.
Yeah, the Racial Imbalance Committee, who've done incredible work. And so this document, we adopted this document and we reviewed it with the principals, again, in May of last year, and we set out to just use it for, among ourselves. So that's where we began. We have also, so we can go to the, this is some of the work that we have done. The principals have used the document with their school councils. So they have gone through all of the standards that appear here, which are, there are 6 standards. One is about welcoming all stakeholders, and you can reread this at your leisure. We can come back and share. Communicating effectively, supporting the success of children and youth, advocating for each child and youth, sharing power and responsibility, and partnering with the community. So those are the 6 standards. And so the exercise has been conducted, principals with their school councils, and we have our principals here. They have shared with us, the results of that exercise. We centrally work with the parent and guardian organizations of each school. So we have asked them, so we want to gather as much data from as many people as possible to ascertain where we are. And so we have asked the PGOs to use the document with their members, so from their perspective, so families who, parents and guardians who are engaged actively in the school in different aspects. And we are also using it in different groups that we're visiting, and we're convening different meetings. We're trying to reach as many families as possible that are representative of our families, and we're doing that in different ways. We have convened a couple of times. We've had some of our leadership members share, including principals, et cetera. We've been to the different apartment complexes. We've gone door to door in 3 different places just to reach out and say, we're here, what are we doing, what can we do better? So we haven't had the time to use the full instrument, document with all families in that way, but we are actually really trying to do, to reach out to those families. Our goal is to have all the data compiled so that we can share it and we can say this is where we are publicly and where we're heading as of February, the end of February. Okay. In terms of, thank you, Maria,
Of course.
for the clicker.
Anticipating well, I think.
Yes. So an important aspect of the of planning, and there were several actionable steps mentioned under that goal, was creating a team and just to guide this work for the district. And I'm happy to say that we have a great working team, some of whom are here. And so we have Monica Hall, who's our principal from Fort River. We have Rick Hood as a representative from the school committees. Dr. Katie McDermott, who is a professor at UMass. Dr. Laura Valdevieso, who's another professor, and Nick Yaffe, who is the principal of Wildwood. So we have a really strong team. We will invite other people as needed. And so we've met several times. Be glad to share our agenda and our work, but it's a true delight to work with these colleagues. So thank you so much for the work. So we can do a check mark on that one, and we're very, very happy with the configuration of the group. We clearly are very interested. An important aspect of this work is collecting authentic student voices. We really wanted to have an organized way to hear from students and to use their knowledge and their advice. So a student advisory group will be created so I can share how we're configuring the group and what we've done. It's harder than one thinks. Kids have a lot to say and are fabulous, but they're also very busy. And it's hard to reach, but I must say that the principals and teachers that are helping us out have been very gracious with, giving us some ideas. Monica has graciously thought of the idea of having a school council, right? A student council with sixth graders. So we're in the process of that, and we're hoping that happens in all of the elementary schools. And so we'll have a student school, council with representatives from each school. In the middle school, we have our counselors supporting us, and thank you, Betsy, and they're working with all of the advisories, and we will have 2 representatives from each advisory. And at the high school, because there's so many groups, and there are some groups already that are doing some of this work and that have been advising us. So 2 of those groups, which will reach out to others, but the School Climate Group and the MSAN students, People of Color United and Latinos Unidos. So there's a lot of places that are already working on this. So we hope to come back to share how that is going, and we're very excited about this piece. As I said before, we were very inspired by Dr. Mapp's work, and we thought about this piece about having families engaged in a community building process, focusing on supporting academic growth. And we were so inspired by the Parent University work with the Boston Public Schools, and we thought that it would be, after reviewing achievement data, after reviewing the survey results of the Latino families that we did a year ago, and speaking to some of our families, we had to go back to the idea that we can't, that we have to do different things for different groups of families. So similarly to what we do with students and teaching, right? We wanted to make sure that that we did something special for some families who have not, when we read the literature, some families who have not been here, long, families who are English language learners, families who are income eligible, and then also first-generation families, to the extent that we have that information. So we thought, there's what we're doing for all families, what we're doing for some families, and what we're doing for a few group of families, because it's the right thing to do. And so in looking at our demographics and again, thinking about where it was most needed, we thought of this group of families. So we looked into the student information system with that data, and we also asked counselors and principals, and we came up with a list of 65 families who fit that criteria. So again, less than 3 years in our schools, English language learners, income eligible, first generation. Seemed to us as though we had to do something different with these families. And so we used, again, Dr. Mapp's project and research, and were inspired to create the Family University. I'm going to pass this out. So in this handout is on one side is the schedule. It's supposed to be in color. We couldn't get it in color, but it's in English and Spanish. The list of the families who fit that criteria were 97% Spanish-speaking families. There were a couple of Asian families and a couple of families of Cape Verdean descent. And we're reaching out to everybody. This is the list of, so Family University, what is it? It's on this side. Where we are offering a 6-session series for district families who have, like I said, the criteria, who have lived here 3 years or less, are English language learners, and income eligible. The main goals of the program are to help these families understand schooling in our community. It's very complex to understand schooling in our community, particularly if you come from another culture, you come from another country. And there are ways around and things. There are things we can do to support families, support their kids better. Learn about their rights, so their educational rights. We take that for granted. Not everybody who comes, to us is aware of all of the rights they have as families. And share community resources, very important, and learn different strategies and how to support their children be successful academically. The Family University series will focus on what children are learning in schools, advocacy, parental leadership, and effective parenting skills in the 21st century. So that's the basic description of it. It then tells you the families, how we decided who these families would be. We are working with a lot of partners to make this happen. We have our own staff, but we also have the staff of the 21st Century After School program. And the beautiful thing is that not only the leaders and staff, but the students who are in the program are helping us with childcare. They're cooking for the families. So it's this beautiful program. We have Latinos Unidos, which both of them are high school programs, and Sherry Abbott and Alex Alvarez are the advisors doing phenomenal work with our students. Family Outreach of Amherst with Francine Rodriguez and Laura Reichman. As you know, they're key partners here. And with the outreach van, we have a use for the outreach van in the winter. So they're providing transportation for families, particularly from Gatehouse Road and Colonial Village, but they're willing to do others. And then there's an information about the actual schedule. There are 6 sessions. You can see we chose the topics from the research and from the needs as we perceived, catered to our family. So so we invited these 65 families. What we did was, we know that you have to make a personal invitation for this to make sense and for people to want to come. So we made 3 personal phone calls, individual phone calls to each family. One, when we decided to do it, after the break, we called also, and then the day before. So we have a lot of volunteers, and through the team, have a lot of volunteers and people making these personal phone calls, and our own staff. We sent a letter inviting them. So it's a labor of love that we have to do, and we're very proud of the work. We had 10 families come. So if you think from 65 families, It was a huge success for a first turnout, we believe. We provided childcare, transportation, and food. And I need to tell you, I wish, I'll come back with more information as it continues. So the first session, as you see, was on January 10th. The next one is February 7th. And I need to tell you that this was one of the highlights of my career here and everywhere. We had mostly Salvadorian families. We had one family from Ecuador. And the families just were very candid, sharing what this meant to them. Because as we continued to talk about what we were going to accomplish together, was learning ways of supporting their kids to be successful, right? Navigating the schools, and being able to support them even if you don't speak English, if you can't read or write. Not that the people here couldn't, but I'm just saying that we were partners in this. It was equal partnership. They had a lot to share about their kids and how they learn and where they come from, as well as our educators. So it's, talking about that partnership. And so I'll share more about that as it comes. Their homework assignment, they had homework. Their homework was to bring a colleague or, a friend or family member next time. They all got, they're getting a binder, and they're getting a binder. They're having the PowerPoint that we're having that day in English and Spanish. We have chosen icons to share so that people, just multiple ways of reaching people, and also not knowing what their literacy levels were. But we had an amazing night. So I must thank a lot of people. I don't want to, but a lot of people did this and made it happen, and we are committed to doing it. We're doing this strategy at the same time as we're planning next steps, clearly, because our hope is to bring information to families, also who can't come or who, for whatever reason, can't make it. So we can continue, I think.
Questions? Trevor?
Yes. This is noble work and sounds great, and I'm sure is great. A question that comes to mind is there any research into any differentiated instruction that might be necessary for the subgroups you described and also others? Because it occurs to me that looking at this the sheet for OASIS, that one of the categories that you should be identifying with instructional practices would be differentiated instruction.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody that may not speak English, or somebody who can't have a winter coat, whatever.
Yeah.
Research you've come across differentiated practice.
Well, this is a direct result of that, because, like I said, like children, not all kids learn the same way. Not all kids are at the same level. Kids, we are all from a strength-based, right? So we decided to do this differentiated approach, meaning that we wanted to address what we thought would be. So in looking at the research, I don't want to share everything now without really having it in front of me, but I can come back and share. But it clearly, when we looked at the achievement data in the district, as a group, the Latino families, the Latino students are having more challenges,
but
right?
I want to point out that with the infrastructure you're setting up for improving instruction.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You'd be remiss to not include an evaluation for how well teachers are becoming.
Oh, now I'm understanding what you're telling me.
Instruction. So
yes.
I'm saying
I agree with you.
That would be the essence of your work. But if the essence of your work is a separate report other than how teachers are doing at it, that's not one of these categories.
So I appreciate it, because this work is all about teaching and learning, clearly, right? But, it's not an equal playing field, as we know. So, we don't want families to feel, or from experience, to feel like they don't have as much to offer as other people who are able to be more in the schools because they have flexible schedules, or because they have income. They don't have to work 3 jobs, or they don't have to have their kids take care of the younger kids or whatever. The reality is they're here and they're all important and they all should have the same shot. So that is our attempt.
And I don't want to raise the specter of evaluating teachers, but that should also be one of the things that we measure.
So I will tell you that the divide we haven't gotten to, which is definitely part of our multi-year plan, which we will have and bring forward hopefully by the end of the school year, right, with the help of the team and others, is how do we make sure teachers understand what it is that they have to do to incorporate this partnership into their practice, right? We want to provide the time to do that. We want to provide scripts. We want to provide examples, the same thing that you're mentioning. What does it look like, right? To be, culturally responsive, to have, the right tools, and how do you incorporate your children's, your students' strengths into your teaching, right?
Yep.
And the
Michael.
standard, can I just say one, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Marie. Yeah.
I just want to say, and the standards actually reflect the requirement to actually
Yes.
be able to be rated and evaluated based on recognizing how to differentiate for students in front of you.
So for
So it's culturally,
So for the first
First
time,
time.
teachers and administrators and the superintendent, we're being evaluated on that standard, on how we're doing with family engagement. So maybe when we come back and talk more about evaluation, this is an integral part of it. So this is the first time an evaluation system in terms of our own experience that incorporates family engagement. This is why we're really bringing it front and center.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thanks. So this is definitely an area I care about. This is the first time I've seen this document, so it's helpful to see. I guess I have two things I wanted to point out. I mean, my sense of engagement, people engage when they feel like they're authentically heard, so they have a voice and they feel like the process is really working. So just looking through this, there's two things I wanted to point out for, as you do more. One is in 4, advocating for each child and youth.
Yep.
The second point, which is developing families' capacity to be effective advocates for their children. It seems like to me that it's a lot of information sharing, and there's other places where it talks about skill development.
Yep.
But I think advocating for your child in any system, or advocating with any system, it's an emotionally laden thing, whether it's fear and familiarity, the stakes are high, whatever. And so you want to have families do it productively, both for their benefit, their children's, and also for the systems. But I think that's a place to focus, to figure out, because it's very easy for people to feel like their voices is not heard, because either they say things the way it's not supposed to be said and they get closed down, or they don't communicate it, they don't feel heard. But I think that's a place, if you want to draw people in, where there's a high level of success. It's hard, but I think that's a place. And the other one for me is just the statement in 5, and my sense is, just looking at this, that it was adopted from, I think it was the state. But I got to question this, and I would suggest for authenticity, it's worth looking at. The statement that families, schools, staff, and community partners have equal access, voice, and value in informing, influencing, creating policies, practices, and programs. I would sort of guess that's not really true, that there's not equal power in that regard. So coming up with a statement that everyone look at it and say, the system's not going to, there's responsibilities, there's accountability, there's things that the system has to do. Parents are responsible for some stuff, the system is responsible for other. But if I look at this, I would come into that equation and say, is that really reflecting reality, and come up with something that maybe is more real in terms of the landscape. What can the district and the system extend in terms of voice and reality? So that people, when they establish the relationship, they know what it is. It doesn't have to be equal, but it should be real. So I would just say to look at that again would be helpful.
So we're going to come back, hopefully at some point, with the results of the assessments, because, this is an ongoing,
Oh, I'm not
really
saying,
intricate.
this is great that we're having the conversation. This
Yeah,
jumped out at me.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So, okay, so that was, another, so we're going back to the actual actionable steps under the goals. One was about working with community partners to develop a timeline for engaging the district students and community in presentations and activities regarding issues of race and class. I don't know if Maria wants to talk a little bit about this.
I'll talk about a few points, and then I think the MSAN conversation.
Yes.
You want to jump
Yeah.
into there.
Yeah.
So we had a number of conversations with the 5 College Advisory Council, which is representative of the colleges and universities in the area, and we've been talking about how do we, as a community, engage in activities, conversations, presentations around the topic of race and class leading up to and during and then moving after the MSAN conference, the student conference, which is in this September of 2013, so this coming September. So we've had some ongoing dialogue, which resulted in UMass's filming, and I'm not going to do the, if these halls could
If these halls
talk.
could talk, yes.
Thank you, Lee Manoir. So one of the presentations we talked about is showing a film and having some dialogue. So UMass
Yeah.
has taken that on and are actually showing it, is it next week, I think?
Yeah.
Next week that's
February.
happening. And then we had some additional conversations around what are we going to address internally with conversations with staff as well as with community leading up to, and where are we going to have the students, student voices. And we recognize that there's a really strong level of facilitation that's necessary to actually do this well. And quite honestly, I was kind of in and out of the conversation at moments saying, we can do this, or I'm not sure we can, because it became pretty complicated. We did have a couple meetings where we had community members join us also to engage in a conversation so that we could learn from those who are expert in dialogue and managing conversations, productive conversations around whether it's dialogue with students or community members or mixed groups of dialogue with students and adults. And what we did was a level of research around how that might play out. What we have kind of settled on at the moment is that we are going to have the speaker who the students were thrilled with, Calvin Terrell, to come and join us, who's had a lot of experience with how are you going to engage in conversations around race and class with community and within the community of the school, but also with the broader context of the community, leading up to these types of events. And so he's coming to us at the end of May, and he's going to help us to think about an action plan, because we felt like, and Marta and I talked about this for a long time, because we could have an event, but it doesn't really affect change. So we could have a conversation, but then where does it go? So what I'm really interested in is hearing from Calvin around his thoughts about a system, giving a sense of where we are right now, and how do we engage in conversations internally and externally over a period of time. So he'll be coming for 2 days at the end. I want to say the end of May.
Yes.
And then he will be involved in the conference in September. So we'll be creating opportunities for the students clearly to have a voice in this conversation, administrative teams, staff, family. Clearly we'll have committee members come and join as well, so that we can think about what is a solid plan for a period of time. Where else?
Another event is we're inviting MSAN alum, to come back. So people, kids from all walks of life, to come and share their experience, while they were in our schools, and then how that has affected them in whichever way in their own lives. So we are we will be contacting everybody as much as we can and invite them to come and share. So we'll let you know, because we'll have a reception. It'd be nice to have you there, because we're going to have a panel, invite students and community at large to both highlight, their work and their contribution to where we are, as well as next steps.
Right. And I also just wanted to mention that, Mary and Sherry, who are working with MSAN students, which you'll go into more, just trying to really think about how not to lose, and this is a conversation I just had with Shabazz as well in his new role at UMass, but how not to lose the opportunity to have the conference be broader than just having students from across the country come and have this isolated experience, but how do we really in a meaningful way engage the colleges, university, and just the community in a meaningful way. So that's the tricky piece of it. It's very broad. We know what we can handle in terms of our aspects of creating this conference, which is going to be massive in itself, and it's wonderful. We can manage that. We also know that we can manage, the alumni coming back and having some conversations around the alumni presentation, but really the broader context of community is kind of where we're still struggling a bit.
And I'll mention one of the strategies that we started, and hopefully we'll finalize soon with the help of RIC, is the community mapping project that we started as a vehicle to, to share with the greater community what are some of, the strengths and needs and challenges, and, mapped with the resources. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
It just means really mapping what agencies already exist to help families, figuring out like what can they do versus what can we do versus what can this agency do,
Right.
so that it's all coordinated and we work together with other people, not just doing it ourselves.
And so, we worked
the map
through.
was great, actually. The start of your work was like
Yeah, that was a
impressive.
physical map of where these places
Yeah, I
are
liked
and
that.
listing them, but we need to do, we need to do.
Take the one.
yeah,
The other piece.
Yeah, so what do they actually do, and, okay, they do this, we know that they can help us with this item, and this agency can help us with this item, that kind of thing.
So pertaining to services and support some of our families have, that's, we created a list of perceived needs with the help of the counseling staff, administrators, et cetera. And then we're trying to map what services are out there to see what's still needed. And so clearly highlighting the pockets of poverty that we have and what those families can access or not, and many other issues. So we're hoping we'll continue to work on that. In terms of there's a lot to share here, but I'll just highlight just do some highlights. The work is exciting. We have to thank Sherry Abbott again, Mary Custard, Mark Jackson, Kim Stender, some of our community members. Shabazz is going to be helping us. He's going to be your representative. So, and a lot of great work happening here. UMass is going to be our host, so we're also working with Sherry Perdomo and a lot of other folks that are really, we're trying to make this a meaningful, different experience for them. We are going to begin, we're bringing the students here. We're hoping that we're going to start the conference here so that more kids can have access, can benefit, et cetera. We can share with the different students from across the country what we do and what we're about. Maria, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, I was good. Sorry.
Okay, so so we're in the process of students will have a vital voice here in the conference, and like Maria said, we're working towards making sure that facilitation, that they're trained and they're a part of this. So more of that to come, and of course we haven't addressed everything on that list. We have addressed most of it. We're not done yet. These are two areas that show up here. The consistent family and student surveys will be implemented across the districts by the end of the year, and we are going to be working closely with the assessment piece too, and Race to the Top and other. So this is consistent with what the expectations are. For the district, so we're going to be collaborating in this. And then the cohesive plan to address needs related to youth culture, this is going to be tied to our student leadership, right, and other voices. So those are two areas. I will finish with letting you know that we have also the team need to thank our family engagement and community engagement team in the preliminary work we've done to address, again, some of the need to provide wraparound educational support for families, particularly, income-eligible families. And we are designing a program, just very briefly, after a very successful program in Brookline, Massachusetts, our MSAN partners, and one that has been 12 years, I believe, or so. And it's called Steps to Success. We're going to have to come up with our own name. But the idea is to provide that wraparound service, and an integral part is our coordinators should go and do home visits. So there's an assessment, there's ongoing support, et cetera, because this has to be systemic. So we can be doing all of these different things, but until we get them to be a systemic and we're really everybody working together. So Rick did do a site visit to Brookline. We're going to be doing another site visit, and we'll invite a couple of other people I know the coordinator. I've made contact with her. We're going to do another site visit to see, and clearly this will be adapted to our needs, to also our resources, because, you know, we don't have the millions of dollars that Brookline can
does.
provide for the program, but they work with the housing authority, so it's kind of a different. So that's a next step that we're working on. So that was a lot. I don't know if you
Thank
have
you,
any other
Marta.
questions, but
So important.
Shabazz.
So, very quickly, I might have missed it, back to the Family University idea. You mentioned a specific outreach to 65, I think that was families. We, of course, have somewhere over 3,000 students
Mhm.
in all our regional district.
Mhm.
What was the criterion or the process of selecting out that group, and what's the plan going forward? Is it staying with that
yeah.
65 down to 10? Or is it
So thank you for the question, because I'll go back, I think, 8 years when our district engaged in a Latino initiative that was well coordinated, all stakeholders in place. The reason why that initiative started continues to be the case, unfortunately, which means that as a group, our Latino students are performing lower than any of the other students I'm talking about as an identified group. And clearly with the growth model and all of that, we're not going to talk about that tonight. But we looked at our achievement data, so both, you know, MCAS, MAP, you know, whatever was available for us, and we identified this as an area of need. So we proceeded, and also we've been working with the Center for New Americans.
So
We've been
the we is the FEED team, or you and Maria, or who is the we?
Oh, this was a team,
The
as
FEED.
well as the administrators, yeah.
FEED,
Yes,
and
we
the
identified
ILT?
the need for targeted support for those families. And the main criteria was about those families who were fairly new to the district, right? Families who, again, are English language learners, so we're talking about income eligible, et cetera. So it wasn't that I decided or one person decided. It was a need that we identified after looking at our achievement data. So this is about learning. And then we also did in December, so a year ago, we conducted a survey, which we can bring back. So we reviewed that survey that we had for families, for Latino families, and it was about finding out, you know, how are we doing in their eyes? What could we do better? Inviting for some feedback, and we conducted that, and it was pretty successful. We had about 30% response rate. So thinking about the work that we had done and building upon that, and with equity, so in terms of access, participation, and benefit of all students, we said we have to do something different for these families. So the idea of a strength-based program that would build leadership, self-esteem, advocacy, etc., modeled after a very successful program that's research-based, that is in our backyard in Boston, by Karen Mapp, Dr. Mapp, who's a premier consultant for the federal government and states across the nation in this area. We thought would be a really great strategy to do.
So is 10 the optimal, or is that the sustainable
No.
number you want to
So the idea is that we'll be able to reach, so we'll sustain this.
Which is a
So
the 6-week series for 10.
yeah, so this is the first time we're offering this 6-week
So
series,
it's close
right?
to that class of 10.
The course of this, but people can continue to come in. It's not close to 10. So we identify 65. We're not turning anybody away. If they bring their families, their friends, their neighbors, even if they were not identified, we're welcoming people. We're creating community. We're creating that strong base that these families need. Our proposal for next year is going to be that we do 2 different sessions. One in the mornings when families are dropping off kids, and one in the evening. And we just want to sustain that. We have to come to families, but also we want to invite families. Families come from their different experiences. A lot of our families who fit into this category, the adults have had interrupted or limited schooling, coming from different stories. But this is about strength based. So we're using their stories and what they can bring to us, to do this. So
Maria?
I also wanted to mention that Marta has written an AEF grant for additional funding for this, hopefully for this work for next year, for an expanded opportunity for Family University. So again, with the pilots in place, but now we're hoping to expand.
Yep.
Thank you.
Martha, thank you very, very much.
Okay.
Just very
Thank you so
quickly,
much.
I'd like to acknowledge an accomplishment that I'm not even sure you might be aware of. I think you've succeeded in demonstrating yet again what makes Amherst such a unique place and why it's so difficult to compare Amherst with other communities. You've highlighted, number one, one of the characteristics of our demographics, the 10 families that you successfully brought in. And secondly, you've also highlighted how the school district reaches out to engage and connect with those families. And so I think both of those are features of our community that make it very difficult for us to find a counterpart, maybe Brookline, if they really want to push us.
don't have the same
But it's really difficult to do that. And I think that's an accomplishment that you really deserve a good deal of credit for. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you
Thank
to
you,
Maria and all of the administrators and staff for making it happen.
Thank you so much, Marta. And I know, do people want to stand for a second while Faye's getting ready to come on up? And Faye's report will connect to the district improvement plan goals, as well as just a general update on student services, which the massive amount of work that's been happening. So I'm going to give you, I don't know how to do this one again. Jerry, I can't do it. I'm going to hand you that. You're welcome. Does anyone else want mints?
I have another.
Okay. Please. No, he's gonna.
Oh, I thought he was taking a minute.
No, he's trying to get the next technology rolling.
I'm on my second.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Icebreaker.
All right. Oy.
So I can't put them back.
Right,
now.
yeah.
I'll give you one.
I bumble through those, so Faye, you're gonna be in a much better place than me, I'm sure.
Okay. Do people need a break, or do people just want to get done?
I think we're good.
No,
That's
we're
good.
fine.
Well,
It's
okay.
our civic responsibility.
We used
We're
to
here to hear
stay,
you.
Faye, we used to stay until like 11 at night, so we're in good shape, trust
We
me.
pull out the disco ball when you leave.
I'll be sure to watch that on TV later. So, how the school committee really works. So, what my intention tonight is not to give you all a big detailed report with a lot of depth, but to try and give you what I view as a mid-year update, to tell you some of what is happening in the Student Services Department, and then as you'd like, we'd be happy to come back and tell you a little bit more. So this probably will leave you with more questions than with information. So, but you could ask some questions, we can give you a little more depth. So to talk about where we are now, I thought it would be good to start with where we began this year, but more appropriately where I began. So since we've now heard from people who have tremendous background and depth of knowledge in the department, I just arrived here this summer, so I started with kind of a clean slate and having to learn everything and have a lot more to learn. But in terms of beginning this summer, it was really a summer of orientation for me, and it was time to come learn the community. I'm happy to say I can get from one school to the other now without my GPS on, so I'm making progress in that way. I now know what the bridge is here between Amherst and Northampton, very different than New Jersey and New York, I have to tell you that. I didn't know it was a bridge, actually, here, so. And I also spent the summer meeting with administrators, meeting with staff members, asked them to come in, and many people did come in during the summer when they were off, meeting with families, and when families, I mean parents, guardians, and students, and also meeting with the Special Education Advisory Committee. I must say, I'm pleased, I want to take a moment to just acknowledge the people who, although they met with me this summer and they continue to meet with me, have come here tonight to be part of this, because the update I'm going to give you really is not my update. I'm just here speaking, but it's really a collaborative process. So administrators, principals, directors, I don't think we have any teachers here tonight, but teachers, families, and the Special Ed Advisory Committee have been just amazingly helpful to me to get the ball rolling this year. So that's where we began. Where are we now? Well, first and foremost, I think one of the things that I've been interested in is continuing the good work that the department has already been doing and sustaining the solid foundations that were in place. But in order to do that with really integrity and me understanding what we need to do, is taking some time to review the structures that are in place and to figure out what approaches we need to do to enhance what is already there in terms of our programs and initiatives to meet the needs of all the many students that we serve. So here's where we're going to go into just some of the highlights of what's going on in the Student Services Department every day. So we are doing, and this is in your, I think the goals. It's in goal number 2, special education program reviews. These are internal reviews. That one of the things that I have as a goal is that by this time next year, that all the special education programs in the district will have undertaken a very comprehensive review. Not outsiders coming in, although we may look into that a little bit also, but the current personnel who are here really looking at the program design, looking at the student populations that are served, what are the service delivery components, as well as our instructional materials and techniques. So we're spending a lot of time. We've started that. We have a long way to go. We will be including the personnel, and we will be getting input from our parents and our families for this. So I'll be happy to share that as we get it done, but we've got a long way to go. The next piece that we're really taking very, very seriously, but it's going to take some time till we get all the information together, is to really do some data analysis. I think we've talked about that as a district and how we're doing that. We're going to take a special look at special education. So you'll see on the next slide, but before we get there, one of the things we're doing is compiling the MCAS results of the special education students and looking at our students and their comparison to special education students statewide. And then we are going to also look at our special education students and how they compare to the overall district. We know already that the students who are special education students are not performing as high a level, but we need to understand that so we can intervene. And this data analysis will also be part of our routine program reviews. So the next slide is kind of like a tease, but I don't mean it to be that. But this is an example of what we've started. So just on the left-hand side here, you will see the little D means district, and the S means state on the right-hand side. So what we are doing is we are taking our MCAS results for our special education students and following them not by just each year, but looking at our students year by year. So we're following the same cohort of students as they progress through the grade levels. Typically, you don't do that for general ed for all students because it would just be a massive, you look at how third grade is doing or fourth grade. But in special education, because we're mandated to really monitor student progress, one of the things we want to do is look to see how they are doing year to year. So what you'll see here is just the data, and this is just a snapshot from the ELA results from 2010, 11, and 12 for special ed on the left compared to the state. So we'll be able to come back and present this more for all the grade levels, but I just want to show you what we're beginning to do. This by itself will be meaningless until we get in the meetings with teachers and to show them this and to show them how the students are doing, so we can then break it down by strands and look at their educational progress. Any questions on that? Okay.
Ask quick question? Just, I know that all of the elementary schools, I guess it was a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, instituted that MAP testing.
Yes.
And I'm just curious whether you're using that data at all to inform this, or are you just using the MCAS data?
No, we are using the MAP data also. That's used routinely when you're looking at individual students. We will look to coordinate the MCAS results with MAP data. And looking at, does it draw the same picture? Are we seeing two totally different things? But we haven't gotten there yet, but that's to come.
Maria?
Let me add something just really quickly, Michael, sorry.
Yeah.
Also, by the end of this year, we've just purchased Inform, which is the partner to Power School, which then takes achievement data and helps us to analyze it in a first of all, in a much easier way, but also multiple sources of data. So by September, we should be in a much better place to be able to look at multiple measures. So what we'll have the capacity to do in a few short months will be pretty remarkable.
Shabazz?
Will the same subgroups you're looking at be moving to Park as well down the road?
Yes, yes. And one of the difficulties when tests change or when the norms of the tests change, you can't control for those variables, but we still want to be able to look at that and look at, are our students making progress? And if they're not, trying to understand that so we know what we need to do. Just when I look at this quick snapshot, I can already, without knowing much more about it, I can look at 4th grade in 2011. It raises a lot of questions for me. I don't have the answers. I'm not going to pretend to guess what the answers are, but it gives us a very clear picture of saying, where do we need to dig deeper? And I think one of the things that, when I look at data, it's not just taking it at surface value, but when you know you have to dig deeper to understand it.
Michael?
I guess two quick things. One is, am I right in assuming that when you dig deeper, that part of the power is to sort of, because special ed is just a big conglomerate of different things, so understanding the different interventions for different groups of students, so that that would be part of saying, well, we're weak with this particular group that have this set of learning, challenges, but maybe we're okay here, that's part of where you're going to get to?
Well, we do that already on a regular basis in special education because each student's IEP, you are doing that on a routine basis. So one of the things that I think we need to do is, other than having that individual focus, is to step back and looking at this as a subgroup.
Right.
And to know how that relates to our program reviews. So we will be looking at it in that focus also, but I think taking even a broader focus is important.
I think that's what I was asking, but you said it much better than I.
Okay.
The second part, just wearing my regional school committee hat, since that's who we are, is that the transition from elementary, and especially for Shutesbury and Leverett coming in where there isn't that elementary history into here,
Right.
I'm guessing that'll be part of, that 7th grade integration component.
Well, we have some of the preliminary work already done on that because one of the things that, because MCAS does take place 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, then you take a bit of a gap. But we will be able to look at what happens from 6th to 7th grade when you have, the other districts coming in. And is that really an influential variable or not? I'm not sure it will be. Although you're looking at the same cohort of students, individual students drop in, they drop out, of that cohort, people move.
Are you able to get our district data for that analysis, or can we help with that?
I don't know, and I don't know if we can right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the MCAS data, yes, when kids enter, but there's a certain level of what is the consistency of assessment tools that you're using at the different levels, because part of what Inform helps us to do is have a learning profile too, so it shows progress over time, and it also does account for interventions. It has the capacity that you can put in interventions and then see the changes. But if you have different assessment tools, or report cards that maybe are wildly very different because it's, we're not all at a standards-based report card yet. There's I think some
Well, I would
challenge,
say
but
If regionalization is not going forward, I would just invite you to figure out how to sort
yeah,
of
it'd be great.
gather that
So,
information
sure.
for the crossover.
And I think that would be helpful, certainly, as we get to the point that we have all of our data, because right now we're trying
Yeah,
to
we're
go
not even there yet.
backwards and also take past data, so
Yes.
when I look at last year or this year, I have some background for it, so I think that would be helpful to do.
Trevor?
To complicate things further, is this data including our students that we have outsourced and shipped to other places?
Yes.
As includes.
This
that
includes
complicates it even further.
all students who are taking the standard MCAS. It does not include students who take the alternative assessment, because the scoring is different, so you
Yes.
can't
But
really.
these are students that are being instructed here in our district and that we've sent off to other
Yes,
places.
yes.
So that my next question is, since 2010, have we updated or come up with some more tools for instruction for special ed besides, our informed software that can help, quantify assessment? Do we have other tools? New tools since 2010?
There,
I don't know when
I think,
MAP started,
yeah,
but.
yes.
um,
And there are multiple levels of assessment
Yes.
that happens within special education. So
Right.
you're talking about evaluation when students are identified or part of the special ed process, which is a 3-year evaluation. There's that data, but this is more the standardized data that all students
Right.
are, including special education students, are experiencing.
I'm asking about our capacity for instruction.
Uh-huh.
In other words, I'm considering and thinking of the students that we did not have the facilities to take care of in
Yeah.
district and we shipped someplace else. Have we built in that capacity, or do we still, since 2010, still sending those same students to someplace else?
I think
That's
that
variable.
on an ongoing basis, and in any district, what you need to do is every year look at what programs you have, specialized programs in district, and how is that meeting your students' needs, and then revise or revamp or change something, because you may have great programs, but if your student population changes and your student needs change,
Right.
you will change those programs. So the quick answer, although I wasn't here since 2010, would be that I can tell you that, yes, that is happening on an ongoing basis. And what happens within each program changes from year to year. Certainly, new instructional materials are looked at on an ongoing basis, training for the staff. So I don't know if that answers.
It does. I'm
Okay.
trying to get at, what the criteria is to decide a student going out and in, and if that plays into assessment, and how it plays into that decision.
It's such a highly
That-
individualized decision.
That's
based
really a
on student
whole
needs, yeah.
separate topic,
Okay.
and that decision, I can tell you, is not based
No.
on
On
MCAS
assessment.
results.
Yeah.
Well, the assessment is
It's one
different than
factor.
MCAS results.
Okay.
Because when you're looking at a special ed student and the IEP, you're looking at that student's progress on their individual goals and objectives. That hopefully has also a connection to more standardized assessment, but not always.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
that's kind of a long statement that probably
No,
didn't
but
fully answer your question.
That colors it in for me, thank you.
Okay,
Debbie?
okay.
Oh, that's
Good?
Huh?
okay. I mean, I just had another question, but I'm fine. I can move on.
So as I told you, I thought this slide would be a little of a tease. And I knew that, you just
We
say
can't
the word
stand being
data.
teased.
But I wanted you to know a piece of the big work we are doing, because I think getting this data all compiled and into a place where each year now we can just roll in new data and it be able to make sense, it will be meaningful. It's just a big undertaking, so I thank you to Mike Morris, who maybe he's not here anymore.
he's in the back.
So, who's
Constantly
been helping
vigilant.
me with this and
Yes.
putting it together. But I have found it in the past to be a tremendously useful tool for me as a director, and very, very meaningful for teachers.
Yes.
And it's nice when you put it in a little pie and it's visual and it can make sense to people, so. Okay, now we're off data, so I hope this will be as engaging to everybody. But we're going to talk about a few of the other things that are going on in the department. PBIS, I think we have a meeting later this school year that is more, you're going to hear more about the PBIS initiative and where we are, but that is still something that is a very, very strong focus in the Student Services Department as well as in each individual school. The schools are at the state now where they have really strong school-wide systems to promote the positive culture and climate in each school. And, you know, I think we see that as part of the language in the schools, particularly in the elementary schools at this point. Secondary schools are there. They're not as many years down the road, so, but they're catching on really quickly. It's something that has been very, very well received. And just important to note that our UMass partners have been absolutely invaluable in this process. The student interns as well as the professors who are part of this process are tremendous. So I think it's good for us and it's good for them also. So that's always nice when it's a win-win. And where we are now, we are looking at data that we are trying to collect to be able to say, how effective is this? What changes are we seeing? As well as trying to take the school-wide systems and take it one level deeper into classroom systems so that each teacher feels like they have a good set of tools that they can really promote the culture and climate in a positive way. So very exciting work that's going on and a great committed group of people that are doing it. Parent collaboration, this is, you know, to follow Marta's presentation. It certainly is a very, very strong focus of mine as a director that we cannot do good work in a student services department without a real strong culture of collaboration and cooperation. Our CPAC, which is kind of the acronym for the Special Ed Parent Advisory Committee, have been absolutely wonderful and invaluable to work with. We have regular meetings and we do some routine work, but just the fact that I have the availability of my executive board who can then reach out to other people. If I have a question and we're talking about a direction we need to take or I need to make a decision, I have real direct access to a group that can then fill out to other parents to get input. And that culture of collaboration is a focus of ongoing growth for the department. So. And I'm pleased that, you know, I've had worked in a district where my parent advisory group was less well established. I've spent many an evening with a meeting set up for my parent advisory group and been there by myself or been there with one other parent. And I think the beauty of Amherst is that there is such an involved parent community. And that will make a direct link to the student progress. So not only are they great during the day when they're children or they're talking about their children, but to have them join us for tonight I think is a really special thing. And I just, if they're still here, I want to acknowledge that again. So, now another piece that is in student services. Student services is one of those departments that you can say, how many hats do you wear, and which one do you have on when, or how do you wear all of them at the same time? One of the things we are really working on establishing right now is a district crisis team. We have had a very, very strong safety committee here in the district, and we've had building safety teams and building crisis teams, but one of the directions we're moving is to also having a district-wide crisis team. Unfortunately, I think we all know that in the events of the past month, there's been some, or maybe it's more than a month now, probably about 6 weeks, it's brought to our attention again that there are sometimes, no matter how much safety focus we have, that unfortunate things can happen. And we want to, at this point, make sure that the Amherst community has a really well-defined district crisis team with an organizational chart and clear communication, so that if and when we need to address something that doesn't just affect one building, that we have clear structures in place. So we are working on this presently, and I think everybody is all on board with doing this. So we will have the district crisis team, which we will have resources. Again, our partners from the different colleges have been wonderful to work with to help us make sure we have resources, and we will just, what I'm hoping to do is that we have everything in place so that if and when something happens, we're not starting at that point to figure out, so how do we communicate this and what do we do here, but that we have really clear systems in place. On to the next, professional development. I think we've spoken a little bit about this tonight for when you were asking questions to the other presenters, but in the Student Services Department, we are really focusing on continuing to build the expertise of our personnel that are here in the district, so that as new challenges of how to help students make progress, that we're not looking elsewhere, whether we're not looking to other schools or looking to outside people, but that we continue to build our staff members' expertise. And some of the few things that we're focusing on, we're in the process of developing a partnership with Elms College to offer a cohort here in district of personnel who will be enrolled in graduate level courses towards getting their BCBA certification. That stands for Board Certified Behavior Analyst. In the supply and demand world out there in the market, these are 4 letters that anyone who's looking for further certification, this is a popular one that will ensure you a good place in the market out there. But where that leaves us as a district right now, because we have students who need the skills of somebody who can help analyze behavior to plan appropriate interventions, when we go to look out there, people with this skill are very, very hard to find. So instead of kind of having to advertise and come up short all the time, what we've decided to do is to partner with a college that offers these courses and to have them come here and have our staff take these courses here. It's also nice to, if you're going to take what's a very, very high intensity course load, to have to learn by a cohort of people that you work with every day. So when you're trying to study for an exam or do a project, you have your colleagues right there. And the staff won't have to travel. So it will be after work, they're right here. It should be a win-win situation. We were hoping to have started that this month, but just in terms of scheduling and having enough staff, we're waiting till the fall to start that. We're also continuing to provide training opportunities for our teachers in the area of phonics-based reading instruction, so that we can early on help some of our struggling readers be able to have the type of instruction that will really help them be successful in their learning, as well as we are looking to continue to build upon the expertise of our teachers in the area of assistive technology, so that our students have the ability to access their curriculum and access their learning opportunities in whatever manner fits their learning need. I would tell you that this piece is, and well, probably all of these, are not just in the area of special education, but you will see later on, well, I'll talk about that all of these initiatives that we're doing, it's really collaborative amongst other departments, so that we can not just say we're doing this for students who are on special education or students with already diagnosed disabilities, but that it will meet all students' learning needs. So maybe we can be proactive and really build upon our classrooms and the learning opportunities, so it'll meet all students' needs before they ever get to student services. Okay. Oh, the Wellness Committee. This is another initiative that I think has been in place for a while in the district, but we are really doing some very, very focused work right now. We have a committee comprised of school personnel, parents, community partners. We have a committee that I have to say I'm fortunate that we have tremendous involvement in this committee. We've learned to do a lot of our work through technology at this point, because once you have parents, staff members, personnel from a variety of the different colleges in the area, as well as personnel from the township, finding dates and times that people can all get together in the same room is impossible. So we're doing a lot of that work by technology, but we are hoping, I'd love to say this year, but if not, it will be hopefully early next year, to really come to you with a draft of a wellness policy that will focus on the overall well-being of our students, that promotes good nutrition, physical activity, and also tackles some of the more challenging areas of how do we address food allergies, how do we address the growing incidence of asthma and how that's affecting our students in school. So we have a huge task in front of us, but we have a great group of people who are working on it. And if at any point any school committee member wants to join us on that committee, we welcome you. Otherwise, you'll just be involved later on down the road. So, but to really begin to draw bigger community attention to this, and this is kind of a PR plug, we are having a community awareness presentation on February 28th. It'll be here at the high school auditorium, and we are going to be showing the Weight of the Nation film, not the whole thing. It's a bit long for, I think we'd be here about 6 hours if we were watching the whole thing, but we'll show a few pieces of that film, and we hopefully will be fortunate enough to have a few people who are on our committee who have different areas of expertise to have some pre-film discussion from a panel that in terms of how do we promote wellness, not focusing just on weight. We don't want to have an over-focus on just weight, although that is certainly one of the pieces. So please mark your calendars now. We'd love to have you all there.
Excuse me, if I can ask you a quick question
Sure.
about the wellness. Judging from the bullet points there, I assume the focus is exclusively on physical wellness as a...
Pretty much.
Is there any...
There's probably a correlation between that and emotional well-being.
Well, that was my question. Good example, I think, would be weight and adolescent, for example, self-image and what have you. Is there any consideration to including emotional well-being in this, in the charge of this group?
Sure. Well, the way I would view the Wellness Committee is that this is a committee that sustains and stays in place. Right now, if we can try to even achieve some of our initial goals, we'll be doing really well, but I have a strong interest, and you'll hear a little bit more about that topic about the emotional well-being for some of our other things that we're doing, but to link that and be able to include that in the overall wellness, I think would be great. So we'll have you join our committee when we get to that part, okay? So, but the next slide, which speaks to just what you're talking about, Kip, is that we have some interest, and we've just begun some discussion as to how to promote the mental health services for the children in our community. We certainly know that other than physical well-being, the emotional well-being of our children affect how they function in school, how they're capable of learning, whether or not they even come to school. So one of the things we're talking about, other than we have tremendous amount of resources here during the school day for school-based issues that our personnel are focusing on, but one of the things that there's been some feedback that we're missing a bit is what to do for our students who maybe are having struggles that are bigger than school-based struggles, that might really need the intervention of professionals that go well beyond just talking about and focusing on their school well-being. There's a part of the community that will, on their own initiative as a family, will seek that type of assistance whenever they need it. And that's wonderful, and that should not change. But we also know here in this community that we have other families, for one reason or another, who are unable to access the resources that may be out there for any one of a number of reasons. So one of the things that we're looking into is what can we do as a district to bring those services closer to school, to look at after-school services that take place here in the school, makes it very convenient, sometimes makes it more palatable for people, for the children as well as their families, so that we can then have a place where students and their families can get the needs that they have that are affecting them here in school, get their needs met. This would not be part of the school day. It wouldn't be part of the student services budget or the Amherst school budget. We haven't figured out where all the funding will come from yet. But we've just begun with an initial meeting, and we're exploring what are some of our options to do that. So we have a great core group for a committee to begin this now, and hopefully you'll hear more about this. We're really excited about it and think it's a significant need. So that just shows you how student services kind of, it's not about the school day, but it continues and it really touches everything. Did you have?
Just on that point, I know, at least in Western Mass, there's a lot of models of school-based health centers. And so I'm just wondering
Yes.
if the equivalent in mental health centers or mental health services in that kind of context.
Yes, well, we do know, I think Holyoke has a whole model for
And-
school-based.
And Gateway.
Okay, so see?
There's several.
Good, so feel free to send me whatever you have. We just started this. We've been talking about it and finally got people together in the same place at the same time. And I think there's a district
Right,
in
Brookline.
Brookline keeps
Yes,
coming
yes.
up tonight, so that has some model for this for mental health services. So we plan
I
to,
can send you some resources.
great, good, so.
Okay. One of the things that prompted me to ask you the question about the Wellness Committee was, since both Aurora and Newtown, considerable amount of writing done on identifying youngsters at an early age who are, for lack of a better term, shy, and are not necessarily exhibiting outwardly behaviors that would be considered mental health issues. Is that something that your committee is thinking about, identifying and developing strategies for addressing youngsters who we can identify at a very early age that have that characteristic?
Absolutely, because I think sometimes we see children at any age that may be struggling with some issues that one could step back and say, well, it doesn't seem to necessarily be affecting them every day in school. You know, you can talk to their teacher, they're doing their work, their grades are okay. All those things that we as a school routinely look at to determine how students are doing. Yet somebody can say, but something else seems to be a concern. So if we can look at having mental health services, both in terms of proactive and also interventions for students that don't necessarily take them out of the classroom, but that there's a strong link and coordination between the services that are provided for that youngster and their families, along with the communication to school, we may be looking at something that can really meet those broader needs early on, I think, is the critical piece.
I've heard that there are support groups in elementary schools for youngsters who are identified as shy. Is that something that would be considered by your committee?
Absolutely. You mean for after school, though?
After school, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're looking at is not just individual services or family services, but are there groups that, you know, whether it's social groups, social skill groups, whatever topic, there's an endless list of topics that children will need help dealing with, things that happen in their life. So that there is then a place for them to have those needs met without having to wait until their parent or their guardian makes an appointment somewhere. So we're hoping to be able to explore and begin some real growth in that way.
Thank you.
So.
Mike?
Quick question for Maria, I guess. I know with the budget cuts of about 10 years ago, school nurses were decimated and things like that. I know in Shutesbury we have a school nurse and a school psychologist, but I should know this for the region, and I don't know about it for the elementary school, but where does it sit?
We're in good shape. We have a nurse, an RN per building, and we also have some additional LPNs who support across a couple schools. I think Southeast Campus, it's an LPN. And so we're staffed well with nursing staff as well as psychologists, school adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, clinical psychologists, neuropsychologists. We're fairly well staffed. We've supported maintaining the level of services necessary. I think part of what Faye's been focusing on, though, is something that's been in conversation for a substantial amount of time, is to really go hand in hand with PBIS is how do you provide a continuum of supports for kids, whole class, like again, Marta's language of all students, some students, very few students, across a range of needs of kids. So how are you addressing students who may have more internalized issues, more anxiety? It might look really different from students who are having to struggle with regulating their emotional response to something. So Faye's been working closely with guidance, school adjustment counselors, and psychologists to look at the service delivery model so that we're much more proactive, but also have the interventions when things are at a high level of need. So we're in still pretty good shape, which is remarkable for many school systems around us.
I think we're very fortunate to have a tremendous group of highly skilled professionals in the schools during the school day. And I think our students are very, very well served by those personnel. However, I think more and more schools are the place that people are looking to, because that's where kids go every day, to how to meet a broader range of needs. And certainly I think we see over the years that the needs are growing. Can we understand why? I don't pretend to have the answer to that one, but we need to do more.
Kath?
It's actually me, but if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the other thing that I think Faye and I have spent some time talking about, because we both have backgrounds in the counseling area and psychology and clinical social worker, there's also a distinction between what we want to address in a school setting, because our goal is to have students be able to function well in that setting, and sometimes the clinical work that someone needs to do outside of school needs to happen outside of school, so that you don't kind of poke at something that you can't help the student kind of bring back together within that setting. So to be really clear about what's an appropriate kind of issue to address in the school setting and what really would be better served outside of school, and then having that level of wraparound services where you have service providers outside of school who can work with kids and families in a way that helps maintain both environments to feel safe for kids and families. It's the struggle.
There's endless possibilities with
Yeah.
this, absolutely endless possibilities. And we had a great meeting, the initial meeting of the committee, but we want to start it at something that's manageable, and then look at how do we grow this to something that works for this community, because what this community needs might be very different than Brookline or other places. So it's really getting to know your community and what they need. So somebody else had a question.
Well, I'm going to leave it with what Faye has described. I was just going to talk briefly about the Brookline, that the one population, I guess I will say, the one population that Brookline addresses in their program, which is called the Bright program, in particular, is the kids who, for one reason or another, are out of school, either for some mental health care or for medical reasons, and how hard that is for them kids to transition back into school. So that's one population that they deal with or are working with during the school day, and that's led by Brookline Mental Health within the schools. But part of what they also do is coordinate with families some of this outside care with what's going on during the school day, and providing kids room and space to transition back into classrooms and come out of classrooms when they need to, but basically working really hard to both transition kids back into school and then keeping them in school. So that sort of that process doesn't overwhelm them, but also this piece about, again, reaching out to the community and reaching out to families, and sort of the school being a place that's helping families coordinate all of that, which can be very complicated. So.
Shabazz? Yeah, very quickly, appreciating the opportunity to get a chance to speak to you in your first year on the job here. Two things come to mind. Mark Jackson, I don't know if he's still here, so rescued me if I'm wrong in trying to remember some things he's said before us at different times. Two quick things. One being executive function issues. The number of students coming to our high school with some challenge in that area. I want to say maybe 40%. I mean, it was something that was kind of shocking that night when he threw it out there. The other thing being how you rate, and whatever inter-rater agreement there is among other ratings, of how we're doing in writing IEPs.
Okay. So in terms of executive functioning skills or deficits, I think certainly I've learned that, and I've spent time over here in the high school. I know they have some materials and curriculum in place this year to work towards promoting that skill level in our students. So I think that's in process. Do we have any real information yet as to how effective that is? We don't have that. This is the first year, from what I understand, that they've implemented this. So what difference is it making? I don't know. I think it's good right now for teachers to feel like they have some tools to at least address that more directly. I think one of the next pieces for that, though, is to look at our whole classroom instruction and what we ask for our students in a classroom to do, and really being able to, I think you must have said it, differentiate. So differentiate instruction, assignment, and assessment, so that we are really paying attention to the students we have in front of us. So we want to certainly make sure our instruction is at a high level for students to learn, but at the same time, we don't want to just hit that brick wall as to where their struggles are. So we're looking at that, we're working on it, we have a lot more work to do. It's hard to address skill deficits when you're trying to, at the same time, keep your instruction at a very high level. So a very, very hard challenge. Being a teacher is a hard job, and to teach the very diverse learners that are in your classroom. But we need to support our teachers to have the skills to do that. So your second? IEPs. Are we getting better at writing IEPs? I certainly hope so. We're spending a lot of time with our staff, giving them feedback about their IEPs, not just how they're writing them, but the whole process of IEPs. So I think probably I've, quite frankly, spent more focus this year on the process of the IEP. And then we also have a focus in the department on the writing of the IEPs. But you can have a very well-written IEP, and if the process to getting there isn't a good one, it doesn't really matter what the words say. So, so I think we're doing those at the same time. We will always work to get better. Just determining how to write specific measurable goals is a piece of our work that we're really working on with staff. It's a hard thing to do, but something we have to do.
we're a C going to a B, or you hesitate to put a letter grade on it?
I don't think I have enough information to do that grading fairly, so I don't want to do what I don't want teachers to do, is I don't want them to grade unfairly, so I'm not sure. And from my work in this field over years, I think it's an ongoing process and something one has to do regular work on all the time. You'll never be done with it. I also think as long as we make sure that we truly view an IEP as a living document and that it's for the time it is now, and that you hope it might go for that year, but if there's a change and you change it, then you're okay. Then you don't have to get so caught up in, uh-oh, is this sentence there or not there, that this looks like what it seems to be now, and if it's not, and we need to revisit this, we revisit it. So, but that's just a little bit about how I approach the work and the messaging I'm giving to personnel too. So, okay. So, the coordinated program review. They might have something to say about how we're writing IEPs. So this is different than our program review that I talked about initially, which is really us looking at ourselves and an ongoing process. I was fortunate to arrive here in the district as the district finished its year of, I don't know if the Massachusetts word is called self-assessment, but that's what I view it as, a self-assessment. And I will tell you that your district, or my district also at this point, really did this with amazing, amazing commitment. The likes of which the auditors from the state have never seen before. And they've been so amazingly impressed. Instead of your student services department having a few administrators pull a few files and do some file review, what happened here last year, you may know this already, but what happened here was that all personnel took an active part in reviewing every single special education file. A huge task. But what happened because of that is there was really tremendous buy-in, so that it wasn't myself or the state auditor coming back and saying, well, these are the areas where you've shown need for improvement. The personnel themselves were opening files and going, oh my, we have some improvement. So they really felt it directly, which certainly then helps turn around to say, what are we going to do about it? So that happened last year, and what's going on this year? And I guess it's been about a month now, and they'll be here for about another 6 weeks. Because we are 3 districts, the state auditors do 3 separate reviews. So we're spending a lot of time with them. I'm not sure it's the most efficient use of their time, but we're getting to know them very well, and they're getting to know us very well. So they've been here already, and they've done the region record review, and they've done the region site visit, and they've done region interviews with parents. They have done the Pelham record review, and I think they're this week in Pelham, and I think they were there today, doing the on-site visit and interviewing staff. And the Amherst record review has been completed, and they will be back the first week of February for the Amherst site visit and interviewing staff. They interview a wide range of personnel. They ask them some specific questions, and at the end of all this, they will be meeting with us and giving us their verbal feedback, as well as then we'll then get a report, so we'll share that with you. I can tell you just the kind of snippets, because they gave us a little preview. Although from our self-assessment, they were able to identify, or we were really able to identify, very clear areas where we needed improvement immediately. What they've been able to see is nice changes in the right direction. So staff, it worked. It worked very well to have staff do this intensive self-assessment because they could very clearly see what they needed to change. And we're on the right track. So, if that answers your question, Shabazz. They only look at certain things, though, so, you know, we'll be able to give you that full report once we get it. So, they don't tell us, or I don't know the timeline yet of when we get the report from them.
I think it's like 60 days
Okay.
after, and then there's a process of
Oh,
vetting.
then we
it
get
comes
to
to
review
you
it, right.
first, yeah. So it takes a bit.
But maybe by the end of the school year, we'll have it
Yes,
for you,
you
so.
will.
So, and the other thing, just for Student Services Department to really be effective, we've touched on this a little bit, is one of the, how we work. That we don't work in isolation, that there's routine collaboration with, I think I used the word wrong, I call it the Department of Teaching and Learning, at the Office of Teaching and Learning, but, and we're doing that so that we can certainly work hand in hand and that our response to intervention and our pre-referral systems are well in place, as well as our curriculum materials, that there's not a divide between what goes on in the regular classrooms versus what goes on when a special education teacher is teaching a student. We may need some specialized materials, but we want to make sure that there's not a gap there, so that as we work to get our students back in the general classroom, they are aware of the curriculum and are familiar with it. And we also work, I work very, very closely with all the educational directors, and then some of the major focuses are to make sure our decisions are data-driven. The family engagement and outreach, Marta and I are working closely together. Certainly, there's an overlap between some of the populations that she works primarily with my department. I've been with her to out for a visit to the community because we know that some families are just not going to be comfortable coming into school. So I'll go out and I'll meet them. You know, that's kind of a really special part of my job, that I'm not just in my office, that I'm out in the community and not just in schools. And also the other area is working with the technology department, working with Jerry for really promoting the use of technology to support student learning. And that goes back to that professional development slide where we're really working towards how to look at assistive technology, not just to meet the needs of the special education students, but really to meet the needs of all students and promote that in the classroom so that our students learn the way, I mean, they're digital natives, that's the way they learn. We might have to learn how they learn, but in the meantime, we have to let them teach us as well. So, just as always, in terms of our department, the structures, practices, and protocols are something that I'm looking at very, very carefully on a regular basis. I welcome feedback. There's probably a lot of practices or protocols out there that I'm still learning. So if you hear of anything, and I say this to the community as well, if people hear of things that we need to be looking at, please pick up the phone and call. If people just sit there quietly and feeling uncomfortable with things and don't communicate it, it's hard to do any good work about changing that. And I think that if we acknowledge that our #1 commitment is to our students and promoting their success by the programs and services that we provide, we will all be on the same page. We may look at things from a different angle and through a different lens, but I view that as a good thing because we don't know it all as school personnel, and parents know their perspective, and unless we really open the door and say, please share that with us, we can't do our job as well as we need to in order to make the difference for the students. So I think that's it. So I think we had embedded questions. I don't know if we have any further, but that gives you a little snapshot.
Lawrence. I don't want to get too much into the details, but there was a program that was moved at the elementary level from last year, and I was wondering if you had a chance to follow up on how well that's going.
It's doing good. very well.
And you've kept in touch with parents and students and staff, and everyone is,
Yeah. Now, I wasn't here last year,
Yeah.
but I do know whenever programs have to move,
yeah.
there's a great deal of angst surrounding that. We certainly want the least amount of disruption for our students. What I do know is that one of the things that we have to always attend to is that our children have probably more resilience than we sometimes give them credit for. And we tend to, as adults, sometimes do more worrying than they do. But that's a good thing, because they're little and they shouldn't necessarily be doing all of our adult worrying. But I do know that the program seems to be doing very, very well. I think they fit in nicely. The school has welcomed them well. Personnel have adapted and adjusted. The personnel from the program has done a lot of work with the general teaching staff in the school so that they are understanding those students. And I always think it's really a plus for the school that where the special ed program goes. I think it is a great experience for that community. I think if every school could have some of that, it would help us overall. But
Thank you.
So I would just love to say, thank you, Faye, for your first formal presentation, and just thank you for joining us and for making this transition and for your dedication and the skill that you're bringing to our schools. Coming from another system is quite a culture shock at times, and you've done a remarkable job joining us, and I thank you. And I want to thank the team, the student services team.
Yes.
And the administrators. Lots of work, as you can see, goes on under student services, and this was just a snapshot, but it's an amazing team, and who put children in the forefront of the work. So I thank you, Faye, very much.
Thank you for saying it. It is. You should know that your district and the personnel in your district are phenomenal. Some amazingly highly skilled people, but the level of care and commitment is just tremendous. It really it warms your heart. So it's wonderful for me to be here and appreciate that, and the support that I'm given to do my work every day is great. And the parent community is phenomenal. So I do want to underscore that. And I don't know if people went home already, but if they're still here,
they are. Well, you've made strong connections, Faye, which is really meaningful.
It's the special part of the job. If I don't do that, I don't want to do the job. So.
And I have to say, I love having her here because we talk the same language
Yes.
from our background. So,
so.
Wonderful addition. So thank you, Faye.
Thank you.
Faye, thank you very, very much for your accessibility above. Thank you.
Oh, my clicker. Someone's clicker. I don't know whose it is. It's not mine.
Thank you, members of the audience, for your patience. We don't have any gifts to accept, so we're going to move to the Regional School District Planning Board report. Michael?
Let's see. I will keep it brief, given the hour. Several dates just to share. February 2nd, I think I might have mentioned, but just to remind you, and we now have a name for the event. It's called Report to the Communities. It's going to be in the middle school auditorium, 1 to 3 on the 2nd, and it's the reporting out from the finance and the educational consultants after their whole comprehensive looking at things. So that's sort of the first date. The other date that's worth knowing is that last week it was decided that on March 9th will be the day that the board's going to be making their recommendation either to do nothing, to regionalize pre-K to 6, or to consider a pre-K to 12 region. And that'll be, I think it's at 9:30. We're still looking at doing it in this room, but that's to be confirmed. But March 9th is the date we're looking at. And then in between those two dates, each town will be having a town forum where it'll be town level conversation. The intent of the report to the communities is really to sort of get the consultant information out and then have questions specifically about the findings, since the consultants really can't speak to the process as a whole, but then use the forums for broader conversation at the town level. And on the website, I put up the dates except for Leverett's. What's your date?
28th.
28th. And so Leverett's is 28th, Amherst is February 13th, Pelham is March 2nd, and Tewksbury is February 27th. So I think that's it. Do you guys have anything?
Nope, hope to see as many people there as possible.
Yeah.
And the reports will be on the website from the consultants before the 2nd, but I'm not sure when. And I'll send out a link to Kip. Well, you'll know when you can just send out a link once they're up there.
Any questions for Michael? No? Michael, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
easy.
I think those of us who are on the planning board know, the rest of you may not know, the amount of work that Michael has done, particularly on the grants that we've been successful in getting. A really remarkable amount of work and very successful work. Thank you, Michael,
You're welcome.
regardless of the outcome of all of this work. We could either have a very busy next 11 months, or we could have April through December off to do other things, depending upon the vote. The policy subcommittee will be meeting on February the 6th at 5 o'clock in the superintendent's conference room. We had to reschedule our last meeting to the 6th, so there's nothing to report from the policy subcommittee. And Maria has ducked out. So I'll ask you to look at the calendar and make note of, in addition to what Michael was talking about, what else is coming up in the weeks to come. Our next meeting is on the 12th.
Oh, there's an Amherst meeting, right.
And the Amherst meeting is on the 5th, and Pelham is on the 7th, correct? So, I'm going to take a gamble and assume that Maria doesn't have anything she wants to share with us. Oh, no, here she comes.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can yell if you want to share anything with us on the calendar.
Budget.
Oh, you had to remind us of that.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it.
That was the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Anything else we should know about the
I
calendar?
think that's it for the moment. Yeah, the four-town, we know you mentioned the forums.
Right.
And I think that's it. You know, the four-town meeting is now March 2nd from 2 to 4.
What?
2 to 4, because we have the Pelham public forum in the morning.
So what about the February 9th?
That is canceled. We
That's
do not have that one. Because we wanted to wait until we had specific details to share, and on the 9th, we would not until the 12th in front of the committee.
March 2nd is what time?
2 to 4.
That's a 4-town meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
We rearranged for Pelham's forum.
We appreciate it.
No problem.
I believe that's it, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
On the second.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion from Shabazz, seconded by Catherine. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Gotta do each. Just
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the region. We also need Amherst and Pelham. My apologies. The region is adjourned. I'll turn to Catherine.
So I will take a motion to adjourn the Amherst meeting.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Debbie?
Does anyone have a motion to adjourn the whole meeting?
You want it?
So I motion to adjourn the Pelham meeting.
I'll second her.
All in favor? Adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good job with those grants.